All right, welcome back to part three for June 28th, 2011. We're going to continue on with a prophecy that Paul told us about, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3, where Paul tells us that in the last days, when they shall call for peace and safety, sudden destruction will come. Now we know who the they is. They're talking about Israel. I mean, obviously, the Bible, when Paul and you're dealing with Israel and you're dealing with these last days events that will all center on Israel. That's where it's going to kick off in Israel. So we are told that in the last days, when they're calling for this peace and safety, that is when sudden destruction will come. Now, I want you to understand this. They've been calling for peace and safety for some time now, since Israel became a nation again in 1948. So this part is an ongoing process. Remember those birth pangs from Mark 13:8. We're seeing the birth pangs of the failing peace process ever since Jimmy Carter was president, and he got the Egypt and Israel to sit down and sign the peace agreement, which, by the way, is now falling apart. And so that part, the first part of Paul's warning, has come to pass. Now, the second part, the destruction, it says the sudden destruction will come. And so that's the part that we're waiting for, and we know what the destruction is all about. The destruction is about a war that is going to break out in the Middle East. And that war, we know what that war is going to be because the Bible gives us all the details about it. And if you read Psalm 83, it'll tell you exactly who's going to be in that war against Israel. And you'll see those nations of Syria and Lebanon and the Palestinians, who are the Phoenicians in the Old Testament that are now the modern day Palestinians who are in the Gaza. You see the Hamas, and you see the Hezbollah in the West Bank. Jordan's going to be involved in it, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and these are the nations, specific nations, that are going to be coming against Israel in the last days. So we know that war will break out. Now, we don't know exactly what scenario, but as the time goes on and we see what's going on, we're getting a really good idea about what's taking place. Now, one of the things that are coming up very, very soon is what they call the flotilla of ships that are going to be launched from the European Union and Turkey to come down again towards the Gaza. They're supposed to be bringing these relief supplies to the Gaza Strip. And this happened last year, and when the ships came, the Israelis boarded the ship. Some of the Israeli soldiers were killed, and there was a big to do about it in the news. And Israel looked bad, even though that they were only protecting their territory, because we've seen shipments of arms and weaponry going into the Gaza by these means. And so Israel has promised again they're going to stop them. Now, we know that sooner or later one of these conflicts is going to ignite the war that hasn't been fulfilled yet, or the sudden destruction that Paul talks about. We know that that's going to be the Psalm 83 war. Now get this, I'm going to read you some information about this. It says, and this is from Rutgers, and again you can go to my site today from June 28th, and this article you'll see. I'm going to put it up here, or you can just Google it, and then it will come up for you there. All right? It says, flotilla activists seek blood, Israel's FM. It says, Israel's foreign minister, Avigdor Lieberman, said that on Tuesday participants of an aid flotilla planning to challenge the Israeli blockade of the Gaza Strip were seeking confrontation and blood. Pro-Palestinian activists have said around a dozen ships carrying aid to Gaza territory controlled by Hamas Islamists could depart from the European ports in the coming days. So today's June 28th, And if they're coming down in a couple of days, you could see them sometime in the early part of July. Now, one of the things that, as I said before, Israel has already said, and you'll see this information all over my website, they will stop those ships, they will board them. And we have some other articles that shows us that if they do that, there's a good possibility that we'll see this conflict take place, and one of these days this conflict is going to ignite the major war. Now here's a DEPCA file. DEPCA file says the flotilla extremists have poison chemicals for Israel's troops. Get this. Contrary to the purportedly peaceful nature of the flotilla setting out this week to break the Israelis' Gaza blockade, Israeli intelligence sources reported Monday, June 27th, that some of the activists resist efforts to intercept them and are ready to kill Israeli servicemen coming on board. And this is exactly what happened a year ago. Senior officials in Jerusalem were briefed. Reporters Monday night reported information received that the organizers of the flotilla had laid in store a poison chemicals aboard the 10 or so vessels in the flotilla to use against the Israeli troops boarding them. They are quoted as saying that they had no problem with spilling the blood of the Israeli soldiers. Now, we do know that the Israeli intelligence is they have one of the finest intelligence agencies in the world. So if they're telling us and warning us that these people have these chemical weapons aboard these ships, we can take it to heart that that's probably exactly what they have. Now, if these people come in, you have to remember the Islamic extremists who may be on this ship, they have in their charter with the PLO and the Hezbollah and the Hamas, these people, if you ever go visit their site, you'll see that their charter says that the destruction of Israel. So that what they're trying to do when they bring these ships down is to make Israel look bad, because they know Israel is going to board those ships to protect their territory. And when that happens, the media, instead of saying, look, Israel's protecting themselves, they'll back the flotilla up, say, look, these helpless people, they're killing them. Get ready for this, because the mainstream media is not with Israel. And the whole world is coming against Israel, exactly what Zechariah the prophet told us in Zechariah 12:3. Now here's another one. It says Israel's preparing for September West Bank violence. All right? So, now what is this about? Well, the Palestinian organization has proclaimed that they are going to go to the UN and ask the UN to arbitrarily make them a new state inside of Israel and use the 1967 borders as the state of this new Palestinian state. It says Israel's military is making intensive preparations for an outbreak violence in the West Bank over the UN vote in September on recognizing the Palestinian state, Israeli military officials said Monday. The Palestinians, meanwhile, pushed ahead with their drive. Palestinian officials are fanning out around the world to raise support for their initiative. They hope to change the minds of the U.S. leaders who appear poised to veto the resolution in the UN Security Council to admit Palestine as a full member of the United Nations. For the first time, a senior Palestinian official described a fallback position Monday. Now it goes on to say that the statehood campaign emerged from a long deadlock of the Israeli-Palestinian negotiations and the Palestinian conviction that the government of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is not serious about making peace. On Sunday, the West Bank Palestinian leadership formally decided to seek UN recognition of a state in the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. Now, Zechariah 12:3 tells us in the last days Jerusalem would become a burdensome stone. And as you can see, Zechariah's prophecy is being fulfilled, because one of the major stickling points of the peace process that's failing is the ownership of this city, East Jerusalem. Now here's another one. Remember the words of what Paul told us. All right, I'm going to go right to this so that you can see this. Very, very important. All right. It says, "But of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write to you." And again, this is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. That was verse 1. In verse 2, it says this: "For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord comes as a thief in the night. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction come upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." So again, we see these last days likened to birth, as a woman with child. We're getting very, very close, and it's going to be delivered. Now, if Paul warned us through the Holy Spirit of Jesus Christ, who was telling everything was going to happen in our generation, and he says that sudden destruction will come when they're calling peace and safety, why would you be surprised when you see a headline like this? I'm going to put it up there. You could freeze it. It says this: "Is the peace process the road to war?" I mean, just the headline alone would be enough to show you that what Paul warned is actually in the news now. And we're seeing it live. We're seeing what God showed us for the last generation. We're actually seeing it. This is how exciting it is. It says, "Last week, President Shimon Peres warned that a written peace agreement on Jerusalem will cause a world war, now leading to the Knesset member of the former IDF Chief of Staff, Shaul Moses, excuse me if I don't pronounce the name right, says conflict is the fate of the United Nations Declaration recognizing the Palestinian Authority as a country." And so what he is saying is, if they go before the UN to recognize in a written form, it will cause war. Paul told us that's exactly what to expect. And that came from Jesus Christ. And since Jesus Christ's words all happen, 100%, you will see the fulfillment of what Jesus warned, what he told Paul. And this is the generation who's been destined to see this prophecy fulfilled and all of the other prophecies being fulfilled. And so let's move on, and we're going to move on again and show you more prophecies. We're going to start off with the report of the Palestinian, the Cyprus, the Greece is having problems, and I'm going to explain why they're having problems and in this next segment. So just scroll down and you can see the rest of the news. Thanks.